Suppose I tell you a country's GDP is increased in the last 10 years or doubled in last 10 years. Would you say that that country is happier, healthier and have better lives? Most of you would say yes. That's where we need clarity. Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Nazma, Assistant Professor of Economics, Department of Social Sciences and Humanities, VFSTR. So today we are going to understand why a rich country is still poor, why a rich country has still poor people in it, and why a poor country, which is relatively poor country, has a better way of life. People are having better lives in that country. So in today's session, in today's class, we will try to understand this through the concepts of economic growth and economic development. We would also try to understand the indicators which measure the development, like Human Development Index, Physical Quality Life Index, Multidimensional Poverty Index, and we would also throw some light on a Gross National Happiness Index of Bhutan. So let's dive in. Interestingly, before 1960s, many economists used the words progress, growth, development synonymously or interchangeably. But after 1960s, the scenario has changed. That is because there is a sudden change in the economic system. What was that? So in 1960s and 80s, it witnessed a paradigm shift. The Second World War came up. So after post-World War II, there was a scene where we have seen immense economic growth, where we can see high GDP, and at the same time, on the other hand, we could see there was increasing the poverty, increase in inequality, and increase in unemployment. So you could see both extremities in the same situation. So one side, you have increase in the gross domestic product, which tells you about growth in a particular country. And on the other hand, we have these problems called poverty, unemployment, and inequalities of income, which have increased. So economists thought that even though there was so much of growth, so much of increase in the GDP, why don't we see the reduction in poverty and unemployment and income inequalities? So there is more to a country's development. So the concept of development, they thought about the concept of development. It's not just growth. They also thought about there should be some other things which measure a development of a country. So it's not just increase in the income. It could be increase in other things also which have to be developed so as to have an overall development of a country. So in modern day, there are many indices which measure the development of a country. We also see a newly started concept called happiness index, which is coined by Bhutan. So they give more priority to happiness, well-being and conservation and preservation of nature and culture, all these things. So the conceptual background for economic growth from progress to development is like this. Then the economists have differentiated after post-World War II. They have differentiated the concepts of growth and development like this. Let's see the difference here. So economic growth refers to the increase in the national income in a particular period. Economic growth is the increase in the amount of goods and services in an year. That is the definition. Whereas the development, it is the increase in the gross domestic product, increase in the production of goods and services along with structural, institutional and technological changes over a long period of time. So growth is only a unidimensional concept, but development is a multidimensional concept. Growth is narrowed down only to GDP, whereas development, it talks about different dimensions in an economy, like poverty, unemployment, the levels of employment, how is the wealth distributed, how is the health, education, literacy levels. So all these things, or the infrastructure development, the technology, the science, all these things we observe in development. Let's see one by one here. So it refers to the increase in the national income in a particular period, whereas development, it's an overall development or a quality of a nation, and it is a narrower concept. It is a broader concept because it includes, other than increase in the income, it includes technological development, it includes structural changes, it includes many other developmental aspects like literacy, health, education, infrastructure, sanitation, all these things which are mostly qualitative. Okay, then it is, as I told you, it's a unidimensional concept and it is a multidimensional approach. And economic growth can be measured every year because you can see the increase in the income or in the production. So it's measurable. You can see that in a short period of time. It's a short-term process, whereas economic development is a long-term process because you're not just talking about increase in the income, you're also talking about increase in the other facilities as well. So it takes a longer period of time to develop a country. Then it is a quantitative approach. Quantitative means measurable. You can measure the increase in the income, you can measure the increase, in the production of goods, you can measure the increase in roads construction, you can measure the increase in hospitals, you can measure the increase. That is growth. But it is quantitative, it is measurable in terms of numbers. But economic development is not just quantitative, but it is also qualitative. How? Quantitative aspect in economic development is it's a mix of growth and also other developmental aspects. So, economic development is an increase in the GDP along with the structural, institutional and technological changes which happen in an economy. So, it's both quantitative and qualitative. Qualitative in the sense there are few things which we cannot measure in terms of numbers. We can only feel and understand and see the developmental process. So, it is both quantitative and qualitative. Development is both. Then, economic growth is connected to developed economies and economic development is connected to developing economies. Economic growth is for developed and economic development is for developing economies. Developed countries have already reached the stage of growth. So, they have high amount of income, increase in the GDP every year. But developing economies, why is it mostly concerned with developing economies is there is so many things have to be changed in developing economies. There is lack of infrastructure, there is lack of capital, there is lack of health facilities are less, education institutions will be less, literacy levels will be less. So, there are many things to work on. So, those things we see in developing economies rather than in developed economies. These are the differences. We'll move on with some more differences. Okay, how is this growth or development measured? Growth is measured through GDP, that is gross domestic product, and GNP, gross national product. Per capita income, which is the average amount of income a person derives in terms of, it is calculated by national income by a population in that particular country. So, these are the variables through which economic growth is measured, and economic development is measured through many indicators, but for now we will be studying only about 3 indicators, that is Human Development Index and Physical Quality of Life Index and Multidimensional Poverty Index. There are other indices also, but we are concentrating on these 3. So, it is value neutral, it can be positive, it could be negative, and this is normative. Normative is an approach where we have a value judgment, where we see how a country should be. Ideally, a country should be. That's a normative approach. So, then economic growth is just an increase in the production or income, and economic development is a conscious public policy along with the increase in the income. Okay, so government has to take initiative to develop the other aspects of development in a particular country. Suppose it has to increase health, then it has to look into the number of doctors and nurses and the facilities which are available in a hospital. If it is education, it has to look into the quality of education or the number of enrollments which happen in the school. So, all these things need a public policy, a government policy. So, government intervention is very, very important in developmental ideas. Then, it is an automatic process that may or may not require intervention from the government. So, growth happens automatically. Production, whether a government is there or not there, production doesn't stop. It continuously happens. So, it's an automatic process. Whereas development, it requires intervention. Government intervention, as all the development policies are framed by the government itself. So, these are other differences in economic growth and development. Then, moving on, does development happen without growth? Does development happen without growth? No, because growth is like a fuel. So, if a vehicle has to move, you need a fuel. You need some energy to push. So, growth acts as a fuel to a vehicle called development. So here, how is this by relationship, two-way relationship happens? So economic growth, that is GDP or increase in GDP, leads to higher income. If you have more income, that leads to more government revenue. More government revenue leads to investment in health, education and other sectors. So investment in health, education, nutrition of the people in that country, all these things, investing in health, education and nutrition, these lead to human development, because human development is not just one dimensional concept, it is a multi-dimensional concept. So these are the things which along with growth would lead to development. So human development will lead to the workers who can produce more. So higher productivity. So healthy and skilled workforce leads to higher productivity, and thereby higher productivity leads to higher income, and higher income leads to economic growth. This is how this circle, it is not a vicious circle, it's a virtuous circle, we would say. So there is a connection between economic growth, increase in the income would lead to government revenue, increase in the government revenue, and increase in the government revenue would lead to, if a good public policy is being taken to invest that increase in income in health, education, nutrition and other sectors where we need development. So all these things will increase the human development, and human development more healthy, more productive, skilled laborers. If we invest in the skill development of people, so there would be development, and then that will lead to higher productivity. People will produce more, they can work for more hours with efficiency, that will lead to higher income, and higher income will lead to economic growth. So this is a virtuous cycle, we would say. So growth is necessary but not sufficient for development. Growth is important, but we also need other things for development. So growth is like a fuel to push the process of development. Then how do we measure development? We are talking about how to measure both the quantitative and qualitative aspects of development. So the first development index which we will be explaining in this class are Human Development Index. What is this? It is introduced by United Nations Development Program. So in its first development report in 1990s, this was developed by Mehboob-ul Haq and also inspired by Amartya Sen. So Amartya Sen's capability approach has inspired the concept of developing this particular index. So core idea, development is measured by people's capabilities rather than the concept of income. Okay, we don't, according to the Human Development Index developers, Amartya Sen and Mehboob-ul Haq, one is a Pakistani and one is an Indian. How beautiful is that? So they have come up with this idea of developing an index which development is measured by people's capabilities and quality of life, not just income. So how a person's capability changes? It changes with three components. These three components are a part of this index. One is health, another one is education, another one is standard of living. Here we can remember these components with three letters: health, H, education and standard of living. We measure it through gross national income, I. So we can remember the components of HDI as HEI. So HEI, life expectancy at birth. This is the indicator for health and it reflects a long and healthy life. And education. Education is measured in terms of mean years of schooling and expected years of schooling, that is capped at 18 years. So the education index is calculated. It is a geometric mean of these two schooling years, and then the standard of living is measured through gross national income per capita at PPP. Then this gross national income, instead of using GDP, we will be using gross national income in HDI, Human Development Index, because gross domestic product only gives what is produced inside the country, whereas gross national income also tells about what is produced outside the country by Indians. So this is Human Development Index, which consists of these components of health, education and income. Then based on the Human Development Index, all the countries in the world are classified into three categories. First category is very high human development, which ranges between 0.8 and 1. The second category is median human development, which ranges between 0.55 to 0.799, which was previously, it was 0.500 to 0.79. So it is changed now. So low human development, it is below 0.55. So these are the three different categories under which all the countries in the world are categorized. Okay. So India's Human Development Index, the national official data, it says that India falls under India comes under medium human development. Okay. So approximately we can say our rank according to the Human Development Report 2025, India is 130, its rank is 130 out of 193 countries. The HDI value is 0.6, which is somewhere between 0.55 and 0.79. So the life expectancy at birth in India, according to these latest data, is 72 years. Expected years of schooling is 12.95 years. Mean years of schooling is 6.88 years. GNI per capita is 9,046.76 US dollars. And what is the regional position? India is behind China in development. It is behind Sri Lanka in development. It is behind Bhutan. So it's tied up with Bangladesh. It is ahead of Nepal, Myanmar and Pakistan in terms of development. So you can see here when comparing to our neighboring countries, what is our position. So here one UPSC tip I would like to give is HDI's introduction was done in 1990s. Its founders were Mehboob-ul Haq and Amartya Sen, and Amartya Sen's capability approach has been taken as a base for this index. The three dimensions and the use of GNI instead of GDP. So you need to remember these things. First one is HDI introduction. When is it introduced? It is introduced in 1990. Who developed it? Mehboob-ul Haq and Amartya Sen, based on the capability approach given by Amartya Sen, who is a Nobel laureate. Then the three dimensions and the use of the three dimensions or the three components of HDI, which are HEI, health, education and income, gross national income, not gross national GDP. So you need to remember this. Then we'll move on to another index called Fiscal Quality of Life Index, also called PQLI. So it is developed by Morris D. Morris in mid-1970s. So the precursor for HDI, there was one more index which was developed by Morris D. Morris. It totally ignores the concept of income. It totally ignores the concept of income, unlike HDI. So the precursor for HDI is PQLI. So let's see what is there in this. So purpose of this, it measures the physical quality of life, excluding income. You need to remember this. It excludes income. Then components. What are the components of Fiscal Quality of Life Index? First one is infant mortality rate. Second is life expectancy at age 1, not at birth. You need to remember this. Life expectancy at age 1 and not at the birth. Then basic literacy rate. So to develop a short form for this, what we can do is, you can write it as literacy rate L, infant mortality rate I, and again life expectancy L. So LIL, and one more I would like to introduce in order for you to remember is I, income here, which we are excluding. Excluding income. We can say this is Lily. So for HDI, the components are HEI, health, education and income, that is GNI, and for PQLI, you can remember it as Lily. Literacy rate, infant mortality rate, life expectancy at age 1, and then I, which is excluding income. So this is the gist how you have to remember for the Fiscal Quality of Life Index. Then how is it calculated? Each indicator is scored from 0 to 1, between 0 and 100. PQLI, average of the three indicators. How do you measure it? It focuses on, it's an average of these three indicators. One is infant mortality rate, life expectancy and literacy rate. and this is an average of all these three indicators. Merit, it focuses on physical well-being rather than increase in the income. So it is independent of income. Then limitation, it excludes income completely. There is no concept of income at all in this index, which is also, do you think it is complete? No, because income is, as I told you, it's a fuel which drives the process of development. So income has been completely excluded from this index. So this quality of life index is not complete in itself. So it excludes income, it excludes capabilities, and it excludes broader living standards. Largely, they are replaced by HDI. So PQLI is a good index, but it excludes income, so that is where it lacks. It excludes capabilities also. So all these are covered up in the next index, which was developed in 1990s, that is Human Development Index. So these are two indices. Next we will move on to another index called Multidimensional Poverty Index. So it is developed by UNDP and Oxford Poverty Human Development Initiative, OPHI. So the purpose of this index is to measure poverty beyond income. So income alone cannot be a measure for poverty. So poverty is a situation where you are deprived of basic necessities like food, clothing, shelter. Also, additionally we have health and education also. So poverty is a situation like this. But if you have to measure the poverty of a country in order to explain the developmental process, then income alone is not enough. You have to add other dimensions as well for this. So in this you can see it measures poverty beyond income by identifying multiple deprivations of people, health, education and living standards. So methodology which is used for this is Alkire and Foster method. A person is multidimensionally poor if deprived in greater than or equal to 1/3 of the weighted indicators. This is the procedure how multidimensional poverty index is calculated. So the formula for this is MPI is equal to H into A. H is the head count ratio, that is percentage of population that is multidimensionally poor, and A is the intensity or average share of deprivations among the poor. So here we can see the three components or three different dimensions. One is health, education and standard of living. For health, the indicator is nutrition and child mortality. For education, it is years of schooling and school attendance. Then for standard of living, there are different dimensions which are added into it, because as the word says multidimensional poverty index, it is cooking fuel, sanitation, drinking water, electricity, housing, assets, etc. So this is about the multidimensional poverty index. Then we will move on to the another concept which is connected to multidimensional poverty index, that is India's national multidimensional poverty index called MPI. So it is developed by Niti Aayog in collaboration with OPHI, Oxford Poverty and Human Development Program, based on NFHS, which is National Family Health Survey, and its data is across 12 indicators which include health, education and living standards. So the key reports 2021 and 2023, according to those reports, the key findings are 13.5 crore people escaped from multidimensional poverty. 13.5 crore people escaped from multidimensional poverty between 2016 to 2019 and 2021. So the head count ratio has reduced, head count ratio in this index had reduced from 24.85% to 14.96%. Then rural poverty has declined faster than urban poverty. So rural people have become better in terms of their quality of life because it's a multidimensional aspect which we are seeing. Then in India, Uttar Pradesh has recorded the highest number of people who are moving out of poverty according to this. Then what is the sustainable development link for this? Because there are questions in a UPSC exams which are connected to multidimensional poverty index with the sustainable development goals. So what is the linkage between this? What is the connection? Is it tracks India's progress towards SDG 1 and 2. SDG 1 and 2 is total alleviation of, it talks about total poverty alleviation. Then as we told in the beginning, there is also another concept called Gross National Happiness Index, which is developed by Bhutan. because Bhutan thinks that the GDP alone or other indices are not good enough in order to indicate the development of their country or development of their people. So they have taken happiness as a factor which tells about development. Happiness, the index also talks about, it also talks about the cultural preservation and environmental protection. So Bhutan's gross national happiness framework is often presented as the most complete practical response to this debate. So an attempt to formally weigh material and non-material well-being of the people. Material well-being can be measured, but non-material cannot be measured, which is a qualitative aspect. So Bhutan is trying to tried to develop an index. So this is, until here we have talked about in this video, we have seen different concepts called economic growth and economic development, where in economic growth we can sum it up as if there are two children, one child is growing taller but is not intelligent. Another child is growing taller, stronger and intelligent. His IQ and EQ both are high. Whereas for the first child, only IQ level is low and he has just grown taller. So we can compare growth with the first child and development with the second child, who is taller, stronger and intelligent, and the first guy who is just taller. So only one aspect is not enough, necessary, but it is not a sufficient condition for development. So with this, I would like to conclude this concept of economic growth and economic development. We also have seen HDI, PQLI and Multidimensional Poverty Index in this video. I hope you understand. Let's see the questions from our previous exams. So UPSC Prelims 2018, the question here which is given is, increase in absolute and per capita real GDP do not connote a higher level of economic development. The options are: industrial output fails to keep pace with agricultural output, agricultural output fails to keep pace with industrial output, poverty and unemployment increase, imports grow faster than exports. So what is the answer for this? The answer is C. So increase in absolute and per capita real GNP, they do not tell you about the real growth in a country, a real development in the country. So the answer is C. And the second question is, which of the following are the core dimensions used to calculate Human Development Index? So if you remember the components which I told you, HEI, hey. So what are the components here? So if you can see, the first option is life expectancy at birth, second is mean years of schooling, third is gross national happiness, fourth is gross national income per capita. So first option is A and 1 and 2 only, B 1, 2, 3 only, so C 1, 2, 4 only, and D 1, 2, 3 and 4. So here the answer is 3, because we are talking about life expectancy at birth, second one is mean years of schooling, and fourth is gross national income. So the answer for this question is C. Hope you have understood this concept. See you on the other side in the next class. Thank you.